Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on Air number 33, recorded on the 27th of August, the year 2016, on planet Earth, in the Cyprus Hermitage, on the Nagas Mountain, central Sri Lanka. And because of bad weather, misty and rainy, and as it usually is on mountain tops, we're indoor today. There are 5 questions, and we can celebrate today the question number 100. But first the normal intro. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. I call this, the title of this Dhamma on Air number 33 will be Emergence from Emptiness. And emptiness, suññata, is a core concept of early Buddhism. It's unique to Buddhism. It's only found in Buddhism. It's not found in any other philosophies or religions or sciences. And it's a little tricky, little difficult to understand, but also very liberating, because the idea of an ego internally, a soul, an I, a me, and an external naive reality out there independent of the observing mind is a view, the most catastrophic view that most being clings to. And because they have been clinging to it for innumerable existences, for innumerable universes, and this has been reinforced, this clinging, very long time, it's very difficult to unlearn. So before you can learn something new, you have to unlearn the old, which contradicts the new. And that's why it's so difficult to understand. But the Buddha said it's the most liberating thing you can learn is this Anatta, this no-self, this emptiness aspect of all reality. It's a part of the tilakkhana aspect. There's 3 signatures or characteristics that are universal for all experienced phenomena. And it is anicca, that they are impermanent, they doesn't last. And therefore they are dukkha, they are suffering, they are bad states. And therefore they are not me, not myself, not mine, not something I own or can keep. Tilakkhana, the 3 characteristics, basic knowledge of early Buddhism. But the first question is question 100 actually. It goes like this. What praxis is directed towards experiencing emptiness, suññata? There is, where I say that on the theorist side, there is actually 2 suttas, 2 speeches of the Buddha from the Majjhima Nikaya. This one is thick, and they is number 121 and 122 is the Maha-suññata Sutta and the Cula-suññata Sutta. It's the greater discourse on emptiness and the smaller discourse on emptiness. And they are free on my website, and I can recommend studying them. They are 5 or 6 pages each. There's no time for me to read them up here now. That will take too long time. But nevertheless, I still recommend people to read them by themselves. So Majjhima Nikaya number 121 and 122, the lesser and the greater discourse on emptiness. But I'll try to summarize the main aspects here. Emptiness, they ask, empty of what? You can say it's empty of a self. That's the internal aspect. There is no ego. But then one might ask, who is experiencing? There is experience, so there must be someone who is experiencing. And that's not the case, actually. Because there is an experience, they don't need, thereby implicit, to be an experiencer. You can get that point in by following the argumentation, because there is no self in a video camera. I have one here. It's a video camera. There's no self, no ego inside this video camera. Huh? Still, if I open the video camera and it starts to record, and it does right now, you can see there's a picture on the screen. Then it records information, visual information, form and color. Just as our brain records form and color now. This has no self, and this also has no self. As the Buddha said, there's only in the process of seeing, is there only this process of seeing. There's no seer. And there's nothing, no entity to be seen either. This is only this process of seeing. So, this is an empty camera, you can say. It's empty of self. And this camera is also empty of self. So thereby one cannot conclude by the fact of experience, by phenomenology, that because there is an experienced phenomena, then there has to be someone who is experiencing it. So there's no self. There's no self. There's no ego. There's no I. There's no soul in this camera, nor in this camera. This clinging, this detachment from this idea of an ego, it re-arises every time one experiences something. But in this life, it re-arises in the womb when the baby feels the womb outside itself, and therefore say, now I feel something outside myself, therefore there must be something that is internal, that is myself. If I touch my own leg or my own arm, then I can feel it both in the arm and in the fingers. But if I touch the womb, the side of this thing I'm lying inside, this hot water bubble, then I can only feel it in my fingers, but I cannot feel the other side. So there's something that is external from me. And then there's a me. So right there, the me is regenerated. And this is basically is reinforced at any experience, at any moment, the rest of your life. And this has also been done, we've been doing it all the past lives. A dog also does it, an ant also does it. All conscious beings do that. They say the internal part of the experience is me, and the external part of the experience, the subject or the object that is experienced, that is not me. So this dualism is what egoism is about. It's there the ego is born. It's right there the ego is born. At this moment, the ego starts to say, I am. This is the biggest self-deception, the Buddha said. Asmi mana. Asmi, I am. Mana, something that mind have made up. The conceit or the self-deception that I am. I exist. There is something that exists. Okay, that's so far so good, but it's not an I. It's not an ego. It's not a personality. It's not an identity, because it's changing all the time, according to conditions. So it is only these conditions. When there's a form, and there is a visual, if there's an eye and a retina, and these meet, then visual consciousness arise. And when visual consciousness arises, there's the process of seeing, a visual perception. But this doesn't acquire that there's anybody who looks inside the camera. The camera records, the mind records visual perception, whether there is an ego or not. So it's only conditions playing by. There's no agent, no operator, no chooser, no controller inside mind. There's only these conditions, this flow of perception that comes from the senses, and this flow out of intention as reactions on these, usually emotionally guided, on these perceptions. And this internal and external flow is called sankhara, is called construction. And stilling of this construction is nirvana, is peace, is happiness. This is internal aspect, the no-self aspect. The Buddha says happiness is absence of all sense urge for sense pleasure, hunting sense pleasure. That's happiness. A bigger happiness is absence of all craving, also craving for becoming this and that, and non-becoming this and that. But the biggest pleasure is this absence of this abysmal conceit that I am, I exist. This first evaporates when one becomes enlightened. Until then, at stream entry, there evaporates a part of it, 50% we can say, just for sure. This is called the Sakaya Ditti. The view that this is my group, this is my body, this is my mind, this is my feelings, this is my consciousness, this is my personality, this is what I am. I'm made of that, or I have that, I own that. I own my body, I own my consciousness, I own my feeling. So this whole group of the 5 khandhas, the 5 clusters of clinging, form, feeling, perception, mental construction, and consciousness. This is either me, or I'm inside that, or I own that, I have that. This stream-entrant doesn't believe that. It doesn't buy into that. It doesn't identify with any of that. It doesn't cling to any of that. Why not? Because he knows it to be suffering, and suffering only. Why does he know that with certainty? Because he is, by repeated reflection, has seen that both form, feeling, perception, mental construction, and consciousness, whether internal, one's own, or external, other people's or other beings, whether past, present, or future, they all always are impermanent. They are not lasting. They are momentary phenomena. Momentary phenomena. And because they are not lasting and you cannot keep them, then they are basically, ultimately speaking, deep down suffering. And what is suffering and not lasting? It cannot be a self. It cannot be something identical. It cannot be an entity. It's something that comes and goes. It's something that drifts by. It's a blip of time. So since there's nothing that is identical from one moment to the next moment, like for example, when you see yourself in the mirror, you recognize your own face from day to day, even though there's changes in it. From your baby stage to your old man stage with a long white beard, these two persons are obviously not the same, physically speaking, and neither mentally speaking. Nevertheless, the small boy or the baby boy and the old man, they identify themselves as the same thing. All through all their life, they say, I'm the same, they say. I'm the same. But nothing in them is the same. Neither their form is the same, nor their feeling, nor their perception, nor their mental construction, nor their consciousness is the same from one moment to the next moment. And therefore there cannot be any self, because there is nothing that is identical. Since there's nothing that is identical from one moment to the next moment, there cannot be any identity that remains the same, that lasts eternally, or that lasts even from one moment to the next moment. That's an impossibility. So everything is regenerated, every state, Dhamma, is regenerated, and is momentary, and it's discrete, it's not continuous. This one aspect of it. Then there's another aspect of it, that's the same goes with the world. Sabba Dhamma Anatta could mean, two translation, if we take the intro, all states are without a self. All internal states. All external states are without a substance. They are without compactness. They are without reality, naive, permanent, a mind observer independence, reality. They are without that. They appear only because they are being observed. This is even more difficult to ascend, that external reality is also blinking. But contemporary quantum mechanics will say the same, that there's a distribution of probabilities out there for making certain observations. And only one of them will be made. And which one of them is random. But if you make many observations, let's say 1,000, then there's a known you can calculate a probability distribution in advance. So no system have any properties before they are observed. It is the very process of observation itself that induces the properties of the system. So there's two probabilities distribution that comes to meet there and superimpose. That is what the observer wants to observe. Subconsciously, he has an expectation of what he wants to observe. And then nature comes with a probability distribution, and these two are then overlaid and summarized, and this then bangs out one highest probability that then is the observation. But it's not an observer-independent reality out there. That's not the case. I will read out some about the external reality first. Then we're going to go back to what the Buddha said about the internal reality after us. If we go to the quantum mechanical side of the view, then if we take what the physicist says first, then they will say that there's an observer effect. And it implies that the physical universe first must be observed before it is created, before it comes into relation. And that's Alex Patterson. Eddington, he said, the stuff is of the world is mind stuff. Genes. The whole dualism of mind and matter seems likely to disappear through substantial matter resolving itself into a creation and the manifestation of the mind. Wolfgang Pauli, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics. The only acceptable point of view appears to be one that recognizes both sides of reality, the quantitative and the qualitative, the physical and the psychical, as compatible with each other, and one that can embrace them simultaneously. So, it is, one cannot say that there is some kind of physical reality out there independent of the mind that observes it. Neither in Buddhism nor in physics. There has to be an observer. No phenomena is a phenomena until it's an observed phenomena. John Archibald Wheeler. The path of the electron comes into existence only when we observe it. John Stuart Bell, from the Bell Inequalities. Observation not only disturb what has to be measured, they produce it. We compel the electron to assume a definite position. We ourselves produce the result of the measurement. Pascal Jordan, cited by Max Jammer in the Philosophy of Quantum Mechanics. So this means that the external emptiness means that there is no world real there without observers in it. And if we should take it really far, the anthropic principle in modern cosmology, and in the participatory observation of John Archibald Wheeler, means that the probability distribution that quantum mechanics comes with, the wave function, is created by a summation of all observers, what they expected to observe. What you expect to observe is mainly something that makes sense to you. That is something that you have observed before. And this means that the universe, the system of conscious beings and physical matter that appears out of this cloud of probability, this non-local aspect of all quanta of energy, that there can be either particles or waves of probabilities. This is interacting together because the observers affect the probability distribution of what forms matter can come in. And then this also affects what forms the the observers later on can expect to observe. So thereby, both on the individual basis and in particular on the collective basis, and in particular seen over a long time space, is a feedback loop, a self-generating universe between some physical matter, which is basically a particle local manifestation of a probability cloud, of a distribution of probabilities created by a multiple ensemble of observers over a very long time. And then their expectation at the moment of observation will then flake out the observation. So the observation is not out there. It is something that is always created in between the object and the subject, in between the nama and the rupa, in between the mind and the form. So there's the world is empty of substance, and the individual is empty of self. There is only circumstances. I'd like to show you a very famous drawing by John Archibald Wheeler. And this is his participatory observation principle. This is Wheeler's own drawing, authentic. So you see an eye, and it's observed a big U, which is the universe. And and you can see the eye becomes fatter and fatter. And it's just implied the more and more the eye observes the universe, the more and more stuff, the more and more matter, the more and more locality, local entities is created. So it's a kind of self-generating loop between the observing mind and the external probabilities for matter to be in its particle aspect. That's a participatory observer principle by John Archibald Wheeler, or the strong entropic principle in quantum mechanics and in modern cosmology also. It solves some problems with fine-tuning of the cosmological constant, which is otherwise so far unexplained in physics, and other problems which are something like 40 to 100 orders of magnitude out of order between experiment and what the standard model predicts. So the major controversies in contemporary physics, disorder, and it's not a small disorder. It's a disorder in the numbers are wrong by 40 to 100 orders of magnitude. And this principle, the participatory observer principle of John Archibald Wheeler, solves this problem. Buddha agrees completely, as we will see in some of these citations I will come with now. There was one young god called Rohitasa, and he had the idea that he wants to travel. He could travel by the speed of thought. He wanted to travel to this end of the world, and he had tried that. And then he never reached out to the end of the world, to the end of the universe. He traveled there with the speed of light, probably more than the speed of light, through this great expanse of space-time. And he never reached the end. Then he came back to the Buddha and asked, why not? Why can we not come to the end of the world? And then the Buddha, he answered, the end of the world, where one neither is born nor ages, nor dies, nor is reborn, cannot ever be reached, known, or seen by traveling. However, friend, I say, without reaching the end of the world, there cannot be any end of suffering. It is just here within this 2 meters long carcase, endowed with consciousness and experience, that the world emerges, manifests, ceases, and the way leading to its cessation is developed, completed, and made known. Therefore, knowing this world to be thus, the intelligent one reached the end of the world by completing the noble life. Having directly known the world ends at ease and in peace, there remains no longing for this or that or any other world. So he says basically that the end of the space-time, a la Einstein, the end of the universe, is not something out there. It is that, as Einstein himself said, that space-time is not something out there. It's a thing by which we order our experience. It's a thing by which we put our experiences into order and sequence them. What is before and what is after? What is here and what is there? It is something that when we have the toy as babies and we want to crawl over to the toy and get it, then we crawl over to the toy and then we get the toy. And right there we reinvent in this life, space-time, because we can see that there's some space over to the toy. And it takes some time to crawl over to get it. And there's a before and after getting the toy. So that right there we invent space-time as a perceptual thing. There's a cat. So it is nu skal kalde fisk ud. Ja, sådan. One cannot say that space-time or experience is unreal in the sense that it's an illusion. It's not an illusion. It's just a conditional relation between the observing mind and the external reality. But it's not a static thing out there. It can go in and out as a harmonica, can be very small, can be very large. Has neither time nor space has any specific entity in itself. Neither is it's neither continuous, it's discrete, it's a matrix, it's a gita that we live on. There are certain points we cannot be, cannot exist. So we have to jump from one to the next point. What's in between is really unknown. So continuous space-time is a concept that has to go. But what comes in next is difficult to say. The Buddha will say that it's emptiness. That there's nothing down there on the absolute level. There's nothing down there in the external world. The external world is a phenomenon. It's a mental construction. It's not an illusion, because everything is a mental construction. There's nothing in here either. There's nobody home. This is complete detachment, because if there's nobody home, there's nothing to defend. Nobody that needs to be a superhuman or to be famous. Nobody that needs to be right and wrong and young and beautiful and rich. There's no world out there that needs to be right or need to be corrected or need to be fair or need to have some political association. There's nothing. There's only this emptiness. And then on the surface of this emptiness is this play of conditions, of impersonal, momentary, transient, ephemeral, passing conditions called Dhamma. Not clinging to them is happiness, is Nibbana. Let's take some citations that maybe drive home this point. Sunya Sati, empty, Samahita Nikaya, number 35, the 85 Sutta. Then Venerable Anatta went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, he said to the Blessed One, "It is said that the world is empty. The world is empty, Lord. But in what respect is it said that the world is empty? Insofar as it is empty of a self, and of anything pertaining to a self. Thus is it said, Anatta, the world is empty, And what is empty of a self, or anything pertaining to a self? The I is empty of a self, or anything pertaining to a self. Forms, eye consciousness, eye contact, feeling born of eye contact, craving born of eye contact, and so forth, is empty of a self, or anything pertaining to a self. The ear is empty, the nose is empty, the tongue is empty, the body is empty. The intellect is empty of a self, or anything pertaining to a self. Ideas, mental consciousness, intellectual contact, feeling born of intellectual contact, just as happens now, is empty of a self, or of anything pertaining to a self. Thus is it said that the world is empty of a self. So there he says that the world, all that is out there, is only the eye, the form, and visual consciousness, the ear, the sound, and auditory consciousness, and eventually the mind, the ideas, and the mental consciousness. That's all the phenomena that we perceive. And in these momentary arisings of these three things called contact, passa, there is no self. They arise and cease right there. There cannot be any self, because then the self should come and go incessantly with less than thousandths of a second, probably down at one Planck scale, probably at every Planck moment, 10 to the minus 43 seconds. So if there is a self, then it's a very, 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 very short-lasting self indeed. It's reborn 10 to the 43 times per second, or it's becoming otherwise. So it is a repeated reflection over these issues that there's only these conditions playing by. I think the most freeing aspect is seeing the internal emptiness, the emptiness of a self. Buddha once emphasized that release from this ego substance, ego concept was bliss, as saying blissful is solitude for one who is content, learned, and who sees and understands the Dhamma. More blissful is harmlessness towards all living beings without exception. Even more blissful is freedom from any craving or sensual urge whatsoever. But the supreme bliss is the elimination of this abysmal conceit, I am. That there is an ego that am anything. So there's no ego in here and no outer substance out there. These are both illusionary ideas, collective hallucinations, you may say. The blessed Buddha, he once said, in the seen is merely the process of seeing. In the heard is merely the process of hearing. In the sensed is merely the process of sensing. In the thought is merely the process of thinking. So knowing, you will not be connected with that. So disconnected, you will neither be absorbed into that. So neither with that, nor into that, you are not created by that sensation. When there's no you inferred or conjectured by that very experience, then you are neither here, nor there, nor both, nor beyond, nor in between. Where neither solidity, fluidity, heat, nor motion find any footing. There no sun, no moon, no star ever shines. There's neither any light, nor is there any darkness. When the noble, through stilling of all construction, through quieting of all mental formation, directly experiences this emptiness. Then he is freed from both form and formlessness. Then he is released from both pleasure and pain. This is from the Udana, the inspirations. Another one here also. The Buddha insisted on the subtle and profound quasi-pseudo-real world. The world is bound up and shrouded in delusion. It appears as real and is regarded as it were fine. The fool, bound to this elusive acquisition, blinded by darkness, assumes it to be eternal. But for one who sees and really understands, there is nothing real, stable, or same, neither here nor there, neither inside nor outside, neither internally nor externally, neither any ego nor any external world that is real. I hope this answers this question of the emptiness. Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. It means empty of self, empty of substance. Emptiness of reality in the sense we understand it. Remember John Archibald Wheeler's self-participatory observation principle. The observer generates what he observes by expecting to observe something that thereby is observed. This also explains some about the next question. How does consciousness, viññana, produce form and matter, Rupa? Yes, there's two aspects of it again. There's the aspect of it at the rebirth moment, but as we are reborn all moments, this also goes for all other moments. And then there's the external physical quantum mechanical reality of it. We take the first is that when there's consciousness, Nama-rupa is born. Viññana conditions Nama-rupa. So consciousness conditions Nama-rupa. In the rebirth moment is understood as if there is an egg in the womb that meets the sperm cell, then the fetus will start to divide. So first there's one cell, then there's 2 cells, 4 cells, 32 cells is called a morula. If that egg and sperm cell is not joined with consciousness of the being that has to be reborn there, then it falls out. Then it's a spontaneous abortion. It doesn't hatch inside the womb, in the uterus. This happens actually 2/3 of the time. Spontaneous abortions. It comes out as a normal menstruation. The female doesn't notice it as being pregnant. It's just a normal menstruation. This means that for the fetus to survive intrauterine, inside the womb, until birth, there has to be consciousness present. So therefore, consciousness has to be together with this biology of the DNA of the egg and the sperm cell and the dividing morula. This has to be joined with consciousness, which is a field basically, in order to survive, in order to keep going. Otherwise, it's distorted. Its development doesn't carry on, and it comes out the womb as normal menstruation blood. This is one aspect of it. Then there's the aspect here of it in any moment. It is somehow the same, because this is not the same body. This is a body that is, as that goes for all other matter externally also, is blinking because time is discrete. So in any time moment, this body is regenerated. All these atoms are remanifested. as being local, as being in a particular place in space-time, because there's a high probability distribution for that, then there has to be joined with a clinging consciousness that clings particularly to this matter, and therefore it is regenerated, approximately as last time. Approximately, but not identical to the last time, the last moment it was regenerated. Then there's an external process of observation. That is to say, before the observation occurs, if we just take one particle, there's a superposition of that it can have various properties. Let's say it can have spin up or spin down. Spin up will be it spin clockwise, and spin down will be it clings up. Or it can have a polarity in each plane. Polarity, the wave it represents is going up and down, or is going in this plane. Huh? So before we observe the particle, it has no properties. What we can describe by quantum mechanics, for very simple systems, can we describe the probability distribution for seeing a particular observation, but before the observation occurs, then it has no properties. This particle-like phenomena of a given quantum of energy has no properties whatsoever before it is observed. It is observation itself that creates the properties: spin, color, up, down, heavy, light, being here, not there, and so on. Locality. So it's the observation that flips the waveform, non-local waveform of the quanta, which is a field, to the local particle-like aspect of the elementary particle, and thereby also of macroscopic phenomena, as bodies, mountains, planets, and so on. So again, here you see an interplay between an external reality and the observing consciousness. And this is a duality that Buddha says it cannot be clipped over. There cannot be any observer outside the reality he observes. He is himself, or his consciousness itself, is an embedded part of the observation. He not only disturbs what he observes, he creates it. He selects it out of a given probability distribution. So it's in this way that consciousness creates reality. It creates form. This both goes for one's own internal. In the birth moment, in the moment the sperm cell meets the egg and the conception occurs, in every moment we are reborn billions of times per second, and every time we look out on the world. This is happening. This phenomenon is happening. It is this way reality works. It's this way relativity works. Says both the Buddha and classic relativity and quantum mechanics. This 45 minutes in. I think this hope, but keep asking about these issues. Then we can go deeper into it if it's still not quite clear. It's not easy to comprehend. One has to do a little bit study about it. I'll give some links below that you can follow up on. Again, we take Wheeler's drawing again here, participatory observation. The observer participates in creating what he observes. What he observes is conditioned by his expectation and thereby craving for observing certain things and for not observing a lot of other things. So it's a mental construction. Question number 102. Is it true that meditation helps improving our bad past karma? Yes, that is true. Why is that true? Because in any moment, whatever we feel, if we don't take the emotional aspect, not the physical aspect, but the emotional aspect, we ourselves feel, whether we feel suffering, neutral feeling, or pleasure, that has been conditioned by a lot of past actions. And they will be summed up, all these past actions that are not exhausted yet, they'll be summed up, and there will be probability for feeling either pain or pleasure or neutral feeling, and to various degrees of intensity. So what happens, let's say, if we have killed another person 7 lives back? Then there will be a high probability that we feel pain in this particular moment. However, if the killer has seen that he killed another person 7 lives back and has sat down and meditated, or made hospitals, or helped other people that were dying with medicine and so on, for these 7 lives, then he might not feel pain in this particular moment as a karmic result. He might feel little frustration. Or he might feel that the mosquito is bothering him. Or he might feel that the cat is meowing, or something like that. Very minor effect. Why is that so? Because probabilities are additive. They can be subtracted and added to each other. So this means that if you have a lot of minus probability, that is to say probabilities for experiencing pain in a given moment, or failure in a given moment, or becoming sick in a given moment, because of a past creation of probabilities, bad karma, which we will say macroscopically, then this probability can be subtracted, it can be modified, not erased, but modified by doing something good. And meditation, purifying one's own mind, is doing something good, definitely. Like also giving, generosity, helping others, and so forth. So doing something good, this subtracts from the evil karma of the past, while doing something bad subtracts from the good karma of the past. So beings are born of the karma, the intentional behavior of the past and of the present, is the womb from which they emerge. They are owners, inheritors, and debtors to their karma. They are created, conditioned, formed, shaped, guided, directed, subjected to their past behavior, their karma. Whatever they do, good as bad, only they will experience the result, because consciousness is frequency specific. So we are wandering around in a valley of echoes, of probability echoes. And these probability echoes we will only be affected by the ones that has the same frequency as our consciousness has now itself. And that we are following us all through samsara. So this goes for everyone. There's a lot of electromagnetic radiation here of all kinds of frequencies. All kinds of radio communication, TV communication, internet communication, black body radiation, gamma rays, all kinds of electromagnetic radiation, all kinds of frequencies in this room, at this point of this finger. And there's also another kind of radiation, another kind of wave phenomena with other frequencies that are made out of probability, that's called the quantum mechanical wave function. And that is a wave function that expresses, experimentally verified, the probabilities for all observations in the entire universe, which is the system in question here, if we have to set a boundary. And we are part of it as participatory observers and creators. And we experience our own echoes, because we set going probabilities by intending something. So it's the intention that is the karma, because the intention is a conscious phenomena. And the also golden component of the undulation of consciousness is probability itself. That's my idea, at least. So indeed, yes, one is modifying and ironing out and reducing and diminishing all bad karma, stealing, lying, and so on, by sitting down and meditating. Indeed, yes. So this I can highly recommend. Highly recommend. Question 103. What to do to minimize craving, greed, lust, and desire? Yes, what to do? This is basically Kaya-gata sati, reflection on the body. Reflection on the body takes scanning of the body, seeing all organs, starting from the skull all the way down, all the internal organs, the eyeballs, the brain, the snot, the spit, the throat, the lungs, the heart, the liver, the intestines, all the bones down to the toes and up back again. This is one method. Then seeing the corpse, a rotten corpse from all kinds of stages, with worms coming out the mouth, bluish, swollen, 1 day old, 2 day old, 3 day old, 5 day old. All the corpses until it becomes bone disconnected, that it becomes into dust. Another way is seeing the skeleton. All the bones from the skull and the teeth, all the teeth down to the toenails, and then back again. So this skeleton, this is disgusting. It's called Asubha-meditation. Because when you do this, you learn to control greed, especially sexual greed. A man should consider a man's skeleton, not a female skeleton. And a female should also take a female skeleton. Or they could look at animals, the same. But the best is identifying with one's own body. It induces fearlessness of death, and then it induces that the lust goes down. Because you cannot have, if you keep thinking of other people, especially their sexual characteristics, as being one thing that one day will die and will be rotting and full of worms, then they become repulsive. Then they are not attractive anymore. And then the lust and greed go down. So one should have a picture inside your head from all this training of Asubha meditation, disgust meditation, that can be induced whenever you see the porn image, whenever you see the sexual object. Then right there, the greed goes down. Because of the disgust that is connected with this image, internal mental image of a corpse or of a skeleton. That's the way to do it. It gives an off button, and at the same time it induces deathlessness, fearlessness of death. Fearlessness of death, which is very, very nice. Very, very nice. Well, if you don't fear dying, then you don't fear anything. Because dying is the worst fear you can have. So, to all neurotic individuals, this is very precious to do this skeleton and corpse meditation, because they will get rid of their fear, completely rid of their fear. So I can highly recommend that. One should do it trainingly. One can say the greed goes down as the more disgust meditation you do, the more body scanning you do, the more kayagata sati you do, the more skeleton meditation you do, the more the greed goes down, until it comes down to one level where you can control it, where you can say yes or no. So you're not forced by your own greed. You're not obsessed by your own lust. So you have to look at the pornographic images. You have to take the drugs. You have to drink the alcohol. You have to go and search out a new sex partner. You have to eat the food, even though you don't need it. And then experience the side effects of that. So it's a forced behavior when lust is too strong. It overcomes the mind, obsesses the mind, overtakes the mind. Then the monkey mind has a free run. One is not in control. It's the lust and greed that is in control. And this is this Asubha disgust meditation. I'll give the links below. This can counteract this and disable this. So the mind has control over itself. It's not this lust and greed conditions. Whenever it sees a pornographic image or ever sees a new sexual partner, then it runs for it. Advertisement is built on that effect. The last question is, are there good and bad desires? Yes, there are actually good and bad desires. There are two kinds of desire, those who are advantageous and those who are detrimental. And the same goes for disgust, the opposite of desire. I read out here what the Buddha said about it. There are these two kinds of desire. Advantageous desire for unbinding, for release, for peace. The desire for Nibbana. Why is this form of desire advantageous? Because it leads toward ultimate safety, full freedom, and lasting happiness. So this was the advantageous form of desire, the desire to attain Nibbana. Then there's the detrimental forms of desire. This is desire for body, for feeling, for perception, for mental construction, for sensing, and for various types of consciousness. Why is this form of desire detrimental? because it leads to repeated birth, repeated aging, repeated decaying, repeated sickness, and repeated death. Because it leads to sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, misery, and desperate despair. I tell you, because such desire, such sense desire, leads to suffering. These are the two kinds of desire. There are these two kinds of disgust. The advantageous disgust towards forms, towards body, towards feeling, towards perception, towards mental construction, towards sensing, towards the manifold and various types of consciousness, towards all internal and all external. Why is this form of disgust advantageous? Because it leads toward ultimate safety, final freedom, and lasting happiness, towards Nibbana. So this form of disgust towards all feel, all form, all feeling, all perception, all mental construction, and all kinds of consciousness, including intoxicated consciousness. Disgust towards that leads to Nibbana. Then there's the detrimental disgust towards friends living in the noble life, disgust towards morality, disgust towards meditation, disgust towards understanding, disgust towards right view, disgust towards right motivation, towards right speech, right behavior, right livelihood, right effort, and right concentration. Why is this form of disgust detrimental? Because it leads to inevitable rebirth, aging, decaying, sickness, and repeated death. Because it leads to sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, misery, and desperate despair. I tell you, because such desire and detrimental disgust leads to eternal suffering. These are the two kinds of disgust. So basically he says, desire towards Nibbana is advantageous. Desire towards anything sensual, anything that can be sensed, including consciousness itself, is detrimental. Disgust towards the noble life is detrimental, while disgust towards anything that can be sensed, any phenomena, any consciousness, is advantageous. Why so? Because the advantageous leads to Nibbana, final freedom, lasting happiness, ultimate peace, while sense desire leads to birth, aging, sickness, decay, and death. That is why. So, two kinds of desire, two kinds of disgust. One is advantageous, one is detrimental. 1 hour and 18 seconds. Thank you for today. Remember to send in new questions to Samahita@gmail.com, BHANTE.SAMAHITA@gmail.com, and click subscribe down there on the red bottom on whatever social media, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo or SoundCloud or podcast. Click subscribe so you get this chance to hear the Dhamma again. Thank you for your attention. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhi tattha. May all beings become thus happy hereby. Thank you.
You heard Bhikkhu Samahita from the Cypress Hermitage on the Knuckles Mountain, Pamparella, Central Hill Country, Sri Lanka. Please subscribe to the Google group Buddha Direct and visit the website whatbuddhasaid.net. May all beings become thus happy thereby. Thank you. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha.